Chris, let's dive right in because I know that time is of the essence for everyone in this world that constantly seems to be evolving and falling apart while we watch. So let's start with something personal. Tell us about your experience in online community building, and then tell us how that provides a solution to our isolation, the pandemic, the environment, our country's infrastructure, culture, Web3, etc. To you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, this should only take like 4, maybe 19 seconds, and then we're good. In actuality, so I mean, on the online community side, have been involved in one way or another with online communities for many years. Have set up strategies, have been community member, have been community moderator, and it's really interesting that a lot of the things that we've been involved in with online communities for the past couple of decades, a lot of those things are showing up again in pretty interesting ways when we start talking about things like Web3 and blockchain and NFTs and those types of things. And hopefully over next 45 minutes or so, we can chat through a bunch of those things.
So, I'm used to getting wild hair questions from younger people when I do open source learning academies and when they're trying desperately to learn through the experience we call school. But this was a little bit different, this conversation that you and I started in the fall. And actually, it started with you. You brought up an idea that led to a lot of learning between the two of us and a lot of growth. So tell us a little bit about what itched you and how you got started with this and how you wound up on the open source learning journey that led you here.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my whole career has this sort of ebb and flow to it, which is anchored in emerging technologies, finding things that are interesting and cool to me, that are coming out, and then just burrowing in, figuring out how they work, taking them apart, hacking stuff together, and then figuring out, okay, cool, does this thing have a real world application, or is it a cool and interesting hobby or toy? And so I was doing some of the early AI stuff when back then, we called it expert systems and early neural network things, was doing a lot of work with blogs and podcasting when those really came onto the scene in the early 2000s, was literally, at a conference in the room where Doc Searles, I believe it was, did a search on the term podcast, and 24 results came up on Google, period. Like, we went to all of the pages that mentioned the word podcast. Wow. On the entire web. And had a lot of the early-ish Bitcoin crypto stuff sort of come across my radar in 2013, 2014, thereabouts. Got into it a little bit, wanted to try and understand it. And then, it sort of inflated, that bubble popped in the 2014-ish time frame, sort of went dormant for a while. And then 2017, this new thing called Ethereum came up, and things kind of inflated again a little bit and then popped, and had yet another crypto winter for a couple of years. And then in early 2021, a lot of the technologies and infrastructure that had been built over the previous 2 or 3 years all of a sudden caught fire kind of all at once. So in 2017, there were some early, I'm going to call it art, ? That was looking at using NFTs, and we'll explain what that is in a minute. Did a thing called CryptoPunks that people were kind of playing with. There was another project called Crypto Kitties that people were playing with, but again, it kind of went away for a while, but all that stuff was still floating out there. In 2021, there were a couple of activities. There was a big auction at one of the big art auction houses where an NFT piece of art, digital art, was sold for many tens of millions of dollars. That got a lot of folks' attention, and stuff started heating up on that side again. And when that came across my radar, started looking at it again, because I really hadn't looked at it that much over the previous few years, although I had been keeping an eye on it. And as part of that, started learning a bit about NFTs, not just the sort of digital art flavor, which is absolutely the flavor du jour right now, but really their underlying technology and usefulness as a utility and tool in the toolbox for doing things like online memberships and related types of things. As a result of a lot of the interesting stuff that happened over the last year, there have been some new, let's call it, ways to work that I've started to see popping up in the form of decentralized or distributed autonomous organizations, or DAOs, and we can certainly talk about that a little bit as well, which some folks have described as it's basically a group chat with a shared bank account, and so we can talk about that. And there definitely seems to be this wave of if Web 1, using these terms broadly, if Web 1 was sort of the read web, you went to a web page, you read it, that's kind of what you did, and Web 2 was the read write web, which started again with a lot of the early blogging things, a lot of the podcast types of technologies that were coming out, and then evolved or devolved, depending on your point of view, into some of the things with shared social networks and the like. Those were a lot of the things that folks are referring to as Web 2. And now with Web 3, it's read, it's write, and there's an aspect to have some ownership as well, and a lot more direct connection between the participants in the system and the system itself, as opposed to it being required to have things in the middle, like a Facebook, for example, that's sort of mediating the interactions.
Yeah, so thanks for that. One of the culminating ironies for me about the internet is that if we deconstruct, and you and I both have been very fortunate to know some very bright people who were at the center of the development of the web and the internet itself. And, to hear a person like Bob Frankston tell it, the internet is a series of agreements about how we communicate. And I can't get over the fact that here we are with arguably the greatest set of communication tools in human history. And yet there's more conversation now about isolation and loneliness and the emotional, cognitive, and physical impact of that than ever before.
Yeah.
And collateral, there's also so much information available. And yet, algorithmically speaking, culturally speaking, it's harder than ever to tell the signal from the noise. So when I remember you talking about 1.0 and 2.0, that made a certain sense to me back when. But ever since Gavin Wood of Ethereum sort of rechristened 3.0 as Web 3, things are not really meaning what they used to mean. And people I have a lot of respect for, and you do too, Tim O'Reilly, Cory Doctorow, are sort of on the skeptical side of all of this, saying, well, yeah, trust but verify, but what about third parties? What about marketplaces? Before we go too deep down the rabbit hole, I know that you put together a great explainer deck. And so what I'm hoping is that for the next little while here, you can help us separate the signal from the noise when it comes to all of this word salad and exclamation points that get thrown around, so that we can tell, what's the steak and what's the sizzle. Would you be willing to share that deck that you created?
Yeah, I can pull that up. Just give me a second, and I am happy to. Let me do a little click here, and let's see what we got. And just let me know if you're able to see things from your side.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, awesome. So, of the stuff that we've been talking about, NFTs are definitely the flavor of the day right now, and there's been a lot of buzz about them. So hopefully over the next few minutes here, can sort of talk through what NFTs are, some of the things that are happening out in the market, and hopefully add a little bit of context around that. So, really there are some questions of just, what is happening. So you've got folks like Steph Curry spending $180,000 plus at the time for, yes, it's a blue, cartoon ape. You've got CryptoPunks, and you've got other types of art auctions going for millions and millions and millions of dollars at Sotheby's. You've got this, whatever this is, CryptoKitty thing, trying to get explained by The Verge. And these are things that are out there. These are things that are happening right now. So for context, and again, this is really focusing on this digital art aspect of NFTs. There are a number of different marketplaces where NFTs are being bought and sold and traded. OpenSea is one of them. There's another one called Looks Rare. There's another one called Rareable. They're all, basically the same thing. They're effectively eBay for buying and selling visual and audio digital collectibles, for the most part, of various stripes. So
Chris, can I ask a question?
yeah, of course.
Is it fair to say that the value of this is a digital parallel to the value of art, in the sense that it's not the oils on the canvas, it's the, in a sense, Bob was right, it's the agreements we make about how we signal to each other the value of something and how we come to agreement on whether it's based on scarcity or aesthetic, but it's not really the thing itself, it's what we say the thing is?
It's, I would say yes, and I would say anything kind of gets valued that way. The value of something is what somebody is willing to pay or exchange or do for it. And so I don't think that is unique to these types of digital things, digital assets. So yes, everything you said I agree with, but I don't think it is unique to this. I think it's the same with physical things as well. Why does a particular set of sneakers that is created with $10 worth of components, why is that set of sneakers worth hundreds or thousands of dollars on the market? It's no different than that. It's what people are willing to pay for it. And some of it is, what's called intrinsic value of the materials and stuff that's in it. Some of it is social signaling, for sure. Some of it is access and membership that you get if you have that thing. And we'll definitely talk about some of that as well. Okay.
Got it.
So, if we're thinking about this, so, when we look at the things we were just taking a peek at, we're saying, so Steph Curry paid 180 grand for a JPEG ? Well, yeah, and no. It's, yes, that's sort of kind of true, but there's a lot more behind it as well. So if we take a step back, let's try and understand first, what an NFT really is. So, if we look at the strict definition, it is a non-fungible token. It means that, they're non-fungible because every particular digital token, every NFT is unique. It can't be swapped for an identical one in the same way, say, a dollar bill could, where dollar bills are, effectively equivalent to each other. They are provably unique online tokens. So what that means is it's effectively a ledger entry in a big shared online database that anybody can use. They can't be forged, they can't be counterfeited, and they can be linked to an asset. So if we really think about what an NFT is, first sort of technical point of subtlety and distinction, the NFT itself is the certificate of authenticity that someone can prove that they have this thing. It's not necessarily the thing itself. So for example, in the Steph Curry case, Steph Curry has an NFT that says he is the one who holds this picture of a blue cartoon ape. It's not necessarily the piece of art itself, if you will. So there's a kind of an interesting bit of subtlety in that. And these NFTs can be attached to or connected with digital assets. And this gets into some interesting intricacies around things like ownership of the art and copyright and such. A great example here is, say you bought a rare copy of a printed book, physical book. You have that copy of that book. You do not, and what you have purchased is the book. You have not purchased the copyright and the authorship of the work that is in the book. So because I buy one of 5 rare copies of a particular leather-bound book, that doesn't mean I now also have the right to reprint that and reuse it in other mediums. The original copyright holder is the one who holds that, and the same thing holds true in this world. So okay, great. It's authentic. It's got a digital certificate of authenticity, but it still kind of looks like a JPEG. So again, yes, that's true. If we dig a little bit deeper, there is some more behind this. What we're seeing right now is they are typically and frequently grouped into collections of, say, 1,000 or 10,000 similar representations. And so it's based on the art style. It's pretty easy to see which NFTs are all part of the same collection because they have some certain traits in common. And those collections, they kind of become memes in some ways. They sort of become a brand, if you will, because they are a collection of recognizable things. So there will only ever be 10,000, in this case, cool cats that are out there. And they kind of look the same, but they are all individually unique in that set. The way things work is, if somebody was going to want to purchase one of these NFTs, they have a digital wallet. And what happens is they would click typically on their wallet, which is usually installed in their browser. And if they were on one of these marketplaces, they could hit purchase. And what would happen is either money or cryptocurrency would go from the digital wallet to the marketplace. The marketplace would facilitate the transfer between the current owner and yourself. And then you would have fewer amounts of cryptocurrency in your wallet, and you would have this particular NFT. And so your wallet is kind of your collection of these things. It's your passport, it's your access card to member perks. And again, we'll get way more into that in a bit. If you think about your physical wallet, the one that you have, in your bag or in your pocket right now, if you think about it and normally think, oh, that's where I keep my cash. Well, how much cash do you really have in there? What you probably have more of in your actual physical wallet are membership cards. Membership card to your gym. Back in the day, you would have a membership card to your video store back when those were things. You probably have a loyalty card or the like for a grocery store, or the same, or perhaps an airline club program or things like that. And it's really useful to think of NFTs in the same way. And some of those membership cards that you have also have interesting art or potentially interesting art attached to them. But that is where the technology gets really interesting. It's this fundamental concept of, you can show you have a thing, you can show you're a member of a thing, and then sometimes there's a visual representation to it as well. With these NFTs, some folks are saying, yep, I want to just purely think of them as a speculative tool. So yep, some folks are day trading them for sure. Some folks are saying, more like traditional art or other types of traditional hard assets. I want to collect these, I want to curate them. And I believe that these ones that I have acquired are going to go up in value over time. And so some folks are thinking about them as investments. The part that really got me interested is, as I was starting to learn more about this, and a lot of this was through our conversations in an open source learning type of model, David, this aspect of community comes in time and time again when I keep looking at NFTs. And so folks who are thinking about NFTs, a lot of them are also thinking about how does it intersect with the concepts of online community and online shared experiences. So we're early enough at this point that in some ways, anybody that has an NFT in some ways is part of the community, the group of humans who are out there who own NFTs, and it's still a relatively small group when compared to the number of humans on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
If you go on Twitter, you see lots of folks who are starting to use their NFTs as their identity, as their avatar. Twitter just rolled out a feature where you can actually verify technically by checking and connecting your wallet to Twitter of what NFT you have and you're using as your profile pic or your avatar. And again, thinking of wallet as store of membership cards as opposed to store of value is useful here. And we are also seeing some NFT communities where the community of the holders or participants for a particular set of NFTs is really strong. And so not just NFTs in general, but if you are part of Cool Cats or World of Women or Dead Fellas or one of those groups, you start recognizing the other folks who are also sort of part of that same group out there. With most of these projects that we've seen, there are a lot of different aspects to it. So up till now, we've really just talked about the art itself. So you've got the NFTs themselves, but the projects that I've seen be successful, they have the art, and the art is usually very unique, very distinctive compared to the other ones that are out there. There is typically a website. Those pieces of art are typically represented and exchangeable on the various marketplaces that are out there. And again, this can be OpenSea or LooksRare or Rarible or other places. There is typically a Twitter presence both for the project as well as the really active folks in the community are oftentimes using their avatars or using their NFT as their avatar. There's usually a place where the humans in the community are convening as well. It's most often either Discord or a Telegram thread as well. Some are even starting to do real world meetups. So you've got all these different aspects that are part of being this group. And if you think about it, really having an NFT and proving that you have that, one of the authentic ones, if you've got one of those certificates of authenticity, it's sort of the golden ticket to getting access to the rest of the community and the different types of perks or benefits that the community has. So there's one out there called Bored Ape Yacht Club. It's one that gets a lot of press. If you have one of the Bored Apes, you can get to their website. There are a whole bunch of things, talking about the project that are on there. They talk about how they built it out. There's sort of these club benefits. One of the things you can get is if you go to the website and you have one of the Bored Apes in your wallet, there is a place where you can click and draw graffiti on the wall of the bathroom there digitally. Okay, I guess some folks are into that. Not entirely my thing, but that's one of the benefits you have there. Projects like World of Women, I find far more interesting. So they have put out what are the perks of if you are one of the holders, here's what you get. Again, they've done some really interesting things. And if we go back to the book example before, of having a physical book that's rare, but not really having the copyright. What World of Women does is they give you some aspect of actually some of that ownership as well of the intellectual property, in addition to owning the, the authentic NFT itself. You get a high quality print, you get, better versions you can download. They also set up, as part of the project, a fund, and as they were selling the 10,000 World of Women NFTs initially, what they said was at various steps of the sale, when they got to 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, et cetera, they would be doing donations to various causes that they were supporting with the proceeds of the sale, which is a pretty cool thing. There's a project out there called Tales of Ronin, and the organization that I'm professionally associated with, Unlock Protocol, helped with building out some of the infrastructure here. What Caroline, who's the artist and creator behind Tales of Ronin, has done is she has started as an artist, sort of got into the building a digital agency for a while, but always had this itch to be a writer, be a creator, be a storyteller, and spun up this project where there were 25 what they called rare Ronin that you could get, and there are 25 different creature types of avatars, and then there are a larger number of sort of the the regular or realm Ronin. But the holders of these NFTs, they have a private community site where conversations are happening. Those folks who are the holders get to influence the direction of an actual book, an actual story that's being written. So Caroline, the project owner, has written the first 3 chapters of this, I believe, and the folks who are members of the community who are holders actually get to help drive what the future chapters of the story are going to happen. They're also starting to put in a game aspect where these characters can battle each other. They're embedding somebody in that game, sort of almost like a reporter, watching what's going on in the various matches and battles and such, and what's happening there is going to make its way into the story. So the fact that you're part of this tight community gives the ability to literally influence the future direction of this story and fantasy narrative world that's being created, which is super cool. There is another project that's built on Unlock called Willow Tree. This is a community based on rave culture, which is super interesting. And in comparison to all of the projects that we've talked about earlier, their NFT itself is literally a membership card. That is the visual NFT that you're getting. So it's not a piece of art. It is truly that membership card that you are part of this community. And what you get is you get access to new things when they're coming out. You get to go to members only events. You get +1s to things that are coming in. You can get into private communities and such. And so the fact that you have this NFT gives you access, gives you membership in this particular community. So why that matters, especially for creators, we take out the middleman. So creators can interact and sell and monetize, if they want to do so, their art, their creations directly with their fans and community members without having to really have a gatekeeper in the middle. They're completely portable, which is super interesting. And we've all been so indoctrinated in the way the big internet platforms have been built, that this is sort of a mind-bending concept. I've talked to so many people who are still on Facebook groups because that's where their community is, and so they feel they can't extract themselves from Facebook or Facebook groups because they're stuck there. And what happens here is, since the NFTs are actually held in the technical wallets of the community members, creators in the community can go anywhere, and as long as the venue, whether it is a website, whether it's a social networking site, whether it is a Discord server, whether it's a physical event, if you have that membership card in your wallet, you can get access to it. And that's what Unlock is actually building, has built out an open and open source protocol to enable all of that portable membership. And so creators are not stuck in third-party platforms, either tithing whatever percentage they are extracting, or being stuck with whatever the rules and access things, and being sort of ossified and stuck in what they're doing. And creators, again, now have a new way of bringing in revenue, if that's something that they want to do. So, if we sort of bring all of those things together, state of the market right now in late 21, early 22 is there's a lot of work around NFT art that is still in the sort of super buzz phase right now. But the really interesting things are these concepts of membership and benefits, and the community of people who are interacting around these various projects. So, a handful of things that folks can do. If you want to start looking at them, you can go to some of the various NFT marketplaces. Again, I mentioned OpenSea, Rarible is one. Looks Rare is another one that just spun up. You can go to some of these NFT project websites like World of Women. You can look pretty much anywhere on Twitter. There's a lot of conversation going on out there. If you really want to start diving in, most of the humans in these communities are interacting with each other in Discord channels. Discord is like Slack, but with a different user interface. And those are just great places to start sort of getting into the mire and mess and wonderful chaos that the NFT world is in right now. If anybody wants to connect up, happy to. I'm C Carfi on Twitter. I've mentioned Unlock a couple of times. The project itself is at Unlock Protocol on Twitter, or unlock-protocol.com. So that is pretty much it. Hopefully that was helpful.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate the introduction. And is it all right for me to ask a couple of follow-ups so we can get a little bit more specific on a couple of these things?
Yeah, of course.
So I heard you say a couple different categories of ideas here, and I want to see if I can distill this out a little bit, both for my own thinking and for people who might want to think more deeply about this but aren't native to the environment. And that's most of us, because it's just so new. So an Andy Warhol paints a soup can and sells the painting. And then the provenance of that is that it is in fact an original Andy Warhol. People trade on that value. But as for the artist, once he sells the painting, he's no longer involved with the transaction or the value that creates over time.
Yep.
And what I heard you say is that for creators, when it comes to NFTs, that essentially because they're on a chain in a marketplace, that as long as there's an association somehow around that marketplace, that they can participate in the value of future transactions for the life of the NFT. Is that right?
That's right-ish, with a big asterisk on it. So this is a common conversation around NFTs. The reality is a little bit deeper. So they're in the, if you dig into the technical spec, the way I understand it, there is nothing in the ERC 721 technical spec, which is what most of the NFTs today use to get coded up, around royalties, which is super interesting. What is happening though is these marketplaces, if the NFT is transacted through the marketplace itself has built a mechanism to manage these royalties. And so, for example, if you look at OpenSea, when you are setting up an NFT collection to sell there as a creator, you can say, okay, and 2%, 3%, 5%, X% of future secondary sales go back to the creator as well. So that is, interestingly, that's actually set up at the marketplace level, not at the core underlying technology level. So it's very common, but it doesn't come sort of natively or for free in the world. So if, for example, I get a digital Andy Warhol, if I sell it or transfer it to you directly, just, party to party, person to person, Warhol or Warhol's estate would not get a portion of that, because it's probably not baked into the underlying smart contract that was being used. And since we didn't do the transaction through a marketplace, there was nothing out there that was aware of that transaction, if you will. And so in that case, that would sort of sidestep around that.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks for the refinement. The second category that I heard you talk about was sort of, I guess, merging from the creator into building community around creations. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the NFTs are sort of the magnets for this, the common currency that kind of brings that coalescing into being. When we first started talking, you had the idea for a DAO that benefited people who aren't normally associated with the Silicon Valley startup culture, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you're seeing now. You mentioned the World of Women. It sounds like an amazing project, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that. How do you see the uses of this technology either being owned by or put to use for communities, for people that haven't traditionally had access to this, aren't creating the wealthy exits for themselves, and could really use an entree into technology in general, whether or not it's Web3?
Yeah, so the interesting places I'm seeing this are a couple of fold. The sort of zooming out, most of these projects have some sort of token associated with them, and whether it's the NFTs themselves or other digital tokens that are fungible and easily exchangeable. Seeing projects that are making sure that their community members, the folks who are super active in those projects, are having the opportunity to get some of those tokens and have either some level of ownership, some level of governance, being able to literally use, sort of their stake in the ecosystem that they're in for this particular project to vote or help drive the future direction of it. So there's a lot of that kind of agency going on, which is cool. There are a couple of other things that I'm seeing that are very interesting as well. So I'm starting to see a number of different projects that are focused around causes. So there are a couple of DAOs, and we've mentioned DAOs a couple of times now, which are really, groups of people working on a project together, and they're probably interacting and making decisions together. They're probably doing some sort of voting using blockchain technology, so it's easily traceable and verifiable, and they are probably doing something that hopefully they've got an interesting outcome. So I'm seeing some DAOs that are doing things around trying to mitigate climate change, for example. There's one out there called Clima DAO, and I haven't had a chance to dig deeply into it, but it's my understanding what they're trying to do is they're trying to buy up as many carbon credits as possible, thus increasing the price of carbon credits on the open market, thus making it less attractive for polluting organizations to pollute. So that's kind of an interesting model. The other bit I'm seeing on the, let's call it compensation for lack of a better term, is seeing projects that are, after they've gotten some traction and started to become successful, what they do is they will retroactively send tokens that are a thank you to their project members, or they're using it as a tool to get a competitive advantage. So, for example, OpenSea is one of the marketplaces that we've talked about here a little bit. Looks Rare is another one that recently started about a month and a half ago. And since all of these transactions are open and on the blockchain, what Looks Rare did was a really interesting move from a kind of business and competitive standpoint, which was they looked at all of the folks who had done transactions on OpenSea and said, okay, hey, we're a new, different place where you can exchange NFTs, and we're going to airdrop. We're going to give you tokens in our marketplace for the past transactions you did on our competitors' marketplace. And they dropped, many tokens into people's wallets, and those things can be exchanged on the open market, or they can be held. And another interesting thing that they're doing is when people are listing and buying and selling their NFTs on LooksRare, they are collecting, any of their sort of marketplace fees, and they're giving it back to the people who hold their tokens. So this concept of community members having either literal, ownership or some sort of either financial stake or voting stake in these projects is woven into a lot of the way that they are organized.
Okay, so I'm laughing because you got me far enough where I look at my browser, I feel like quite a hipster. I see the little foxy thing over there that says I got a MetaMask wallet, and then I click on it and it laughs at me because I have nothing in it and I've done nothing with it. If I'm a person who, and we'll get to what educators and parents need to know, and whether that's self-protection or whether that's opportunistic in a minute. I'm saving that for last. But if I'm a person who wants to explore this, however small, big, whatever, can you walk me, because we were talking about the fact that we both have friends who we get the theory, but we're not doing the practice. And I remember you telling me about a couple of friends of yours who are very technically proficient and who are sort of at this level also. So for those folks who wind up seeing this on one of our websites and want a little bit of explainer, but don't actually want to come out of the room that they're hiding in the fetal position under their desk to really like do this out in the open, what do I do?
So there are, in a lot of ways where these bits of technology are right now is super parallel to getting on the web in like 1994 at that point. So there is still very much work to be done in the how you get started place. Where you get started though is start looking for various either tutorials on how to start working on things. There's a really interesting site out there called Rabbit Hole that I think is at rabbithole.gg that is using tutorials as a way to get people up to speed on things, and then also rewarding them by dropping into their, dropping some amount of tokens or coins into their wallet once they are set up. The thing that is definitely out there that folks do need to think about is this is so early, and some of the the technical user interface types of things are still admittedly very clumsy. And so just in the same way that hopefully, folks are super cautious and thoughtful and know what they're clicking on when they're going to a website, or they get a link emailed to them, or they're going to their online banking site. You need to have that same level of vigilance when working through things here. But easiest way, if you want kind of step zero, installing MetaMask and finding some good tutorials out there, at least get an idea of that. You can just go on something like OpenSea or LooksRare and just kind of poke around, look at the various projects that are out there. If you see one that looks interesting, that you think kind of looks cool, then go on Twitter, search on that project name, see if there's conversation going on about it, see how people are interacting. At the current state, probably if you want to get way deeper into it, need to get a little bit conversant with Discord, which I've mentioned before, which is sort of like Slack. I heard your Slack notification go off before, but it's same kind of concept, but that seems to have been the third place that a lot of the NFT and related projects and DAOs have all set up as well, where community members are interacting with each other. So it's research. It is a little bit of experimentation while being super vigilant about it. And really, I think step zero would be finding a couple of these projects that look cool, and then clicking around, reading, dipping your toe into those communities, and sort of reading and watching and listening first, before getting into the details of how you sign up. If you want a really interesting example kind of at the next level, I'd mentioned that Willow Tree site before, and maybe I'm going to share a browser tab here, and let me stop this and let me start this. And I'm going to try and share a tab and see what happens here when I do that. So Willow Tree, and again, this is the rave community that their membership is based in, or based with an unlock powered NFT. When you come to their site, it's super spare, and so there's actually not a lot of shiny stuff to distract you, which is cool. You can learn about things like the NFT, and you can go in there, tells you what you get, how you get it. They've actually done things, and a lot of the projects, again, like the kind of old world, early web types of stuff, they're putting guides out there. So Willow Tree's done a really good job of, if you want to get involved, here's what you can do. So what is an NFT? What's blockchain? If you want to purchase, one of the things that Unlock does is it does support debit and credit cards. You can do that as well. If you don't have a wallet, here's an example of how you could set up a wallet. If you do have a wallet, here is some of the stuff that you need to do. And there are guides like this that you can walk through, but it's still early enough and messy enough that it really is experiential, is probably the best way to go about doing it.
Awesome. Thanks for that explainer, Chris. So you and I have started a conversation, and I'm going to take the opportunity to tease a little bit. And this is also going to put me on the hook because we're at it's February 1st. Happy Black History Month aside. It's also now 2 weeks officially from the launch of the Lit AF podcast. And that was sort of a pet project of mine that I was doing for just exploring podcasting and bringing literature and ideas to people in a different way, because I like that. And then we started talking about some Web3 extensions of that and building community around that. And you said something interesting in one of our conversations, that right now, the NFT as, digital backup for a JPEG is sort of the hit du jour, but that if 2021 was the visual NFT, 2022 is going to be the audio NFT. Are you willing to say a little bit more about that, where it's going in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a really interesting opportunity. I love the stuff that you're thinking about with Lit AF, and having NFT-based memberships as a way to build that community around exploring some of the classics and looking at literature and stories in ways that probably folks weren't taught in school. So I think that is an exceptionally cool angle. The interesting thing about a lot of the NFT projects and the technical underpinnings is it becomes increasingly easy to use all of these different digital assets that are being created as different Lego blocks that can get connected together in interesting ways, and people can build on top of that. So I would be shocked if I did not see, by the end of 2022, more interesting audio things happening, like someone putting out various loops as just NFTs of just those, loops that they have created, audio loops, or particular drum tracks, or particular vocals or vocal samples that they put out, and then other people taking them, remixing them into interesting ways, and all of those 2, 3, 4, 5 creators being able to share easily in any of the sales of the final created work that was set up. So I think we're going to start seeing interesting things like that. The buzzword that folks in the crypto community use is things are composable, which means, you can kind of build them together in new and cool ways. So I would expect that being one of the other things, in addition to projects like LitAF, that people are going to be starting to explore in realms other than the visual kind of JPEG side of things.
Well, thanks as always. As we close the hour, I'm going to end with sort of a 1-2 question. And as a responsible adult and educator, I want to shed a little bit of light on what people should be mindful of as they enter this space, whether it's gas fees or vulnerabilities or whatever. And along with that, I want to give you the opportunity, because you have joined what looks like a really wonderful tech culture in addition to tech tool, to say a little bit about Unlock and how it facilitates creating community, but also put some handrails on to meet the kinds of needs I hope you'll address in part 1 of your answer.
Yeah, happy to. So, 2 of the gotchas that folks need to watch out for, that you mentioned, David. So number 1 is this concept of gas fees. So in the various blockchains, especially ones that are based on Ethereum, when somebody does something, when they write to that database, if you will, and that can be everything from doing a transfer to minting a new NFT to a whole raft of other things, there's technically computers out there that are making sure that transaction is okay and valid. And when that happens, those folks in some ways are compensated for their computers doing that work. And there are other ways to handle that as well, but for the sake of this conversation, you can think of that as a transaction fee that sort of gets paid out into the network. And that's what the Ethereum world in particular calls gas fees. They used to be, pennies or, $1 or $3. Now they are using what they call the Ethereum mainnet, typically $50, $100, $150, basically every time you do a transaction, which is super high. Happily, there are a number of technical things that are occurring right now that make it possible to use the technology without having to pay those levels of gas fees. So there are a number of other networks that are built on top of Ethereum. Polygon is one, for example. XDAI is another one. Most of their gas fees, transaction fees, are significantly sub penny. So you can get all the benefits, all the things that we were talking about here without having to pay, $150 every time you move, bits from wallet A to wallet B, which is good. And there are some other networks. There's one called Solana that's out there that is trying to address this as well. So this is going to be a relatively solved problem in the next year and a half or so, which is good. The other bit around just being thoughtful and staying technically safe in these spaces, from a not having wallets drained, not getting assets jacked out of them. Those are things that really are the current incarnation of the stuff that we're hopefully all pretty well trained on in things like email phishing scams and stuff. So you don't ever go to, if you get an email, you don't click on a link and go to a site without really checking that it's really that site before you put in your credentials and such. Same thing here. Every connection you do, your wallet is probably going to pop up and say, hey, sign this transaction. Know you're on the correct site. We see folks doing things like going into Discord servers and pretending to be admins and pointing people at fake links. It's the same kind of malicious behavior that we've seen for the last 20 years on the web. It's in a new place and it gets a lot of hype. It's the same old games, just with a new battleground for them. So those are some of the things that are out there. And what we're doing with Unlock, to answer your other question, is a couple-fold. It's an open source project. We are really trying to build this infrastructure for doing memberships as a new layer of the web. And so it's very easy for creators to spin up their projects. We saw a couple of them in this conversation with Tales of Ronin and the Willow Tree. Those are projects that were spun up from a technical level in days to weeks. There's a lot of work, like any other significant endeavor that's done behind that. But working with creators to spin up those types of projects, also doing a lot of work with developers as we're trying to build this new layer of the web that makes these memberships portable and usable and ownable by anyone. So if you are building WordPress sites, if you're building regular websites, if you're building a community on Discord, Unlock works in all of those. And so anybody who's building stuff and wants to take advantage of Web3 and memberships on the developer side, it's very straightforward. We've got super good docs to how to implement that stuff and actually integrate it into the technical underpinnings, even if Unlock itself is never mentioned.
That's fantastic. Well, it's amazing. There's always something new to learn. And as soon as we master this, we're going to be talking about Web fourth dimension and teleporting. So Chris, for now, thanks so much for spending some time with us and shedding some light on all this stuff. I look forward to seeing what's next for you.
Awesome. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris Carfi, head of marketing for Unlock and overall tech maven and good friend of mine. This was a really rewarding hour. I will be posting the notes and the video on davidpreston.net. So look for that sometime in the next week. And I'm going to end the recording here.